Welcome to the coolest people I know. We're so glad that you're joining us today for our episode and for our story as we meet literally one of the coolest people I know. His name is Eric Hoke. He manages people well and treats people well and helps people really identify the gifts and talents and all of the things that helps them bring about the life that they want to bring about. So he is a force multiplier. Let's just leave it at that. You're going to hear a lot from him today. He's got a lot to say. And let's go to his story now. I am here with Eric Hoke. Eric is a dear friend of mine who is in various amounts of worlds all over the place. I got to know him a little bit from his journey of church planting in New York City and now lives in central PA. He is an author, a founder, and a leader at the intersection of career, calling, and identity, such a unique place for so many of us who are in this world. So, Eric, how's it going? What's new and exciting? How's life?
Oh man, life is good. I went to the barber shop today, got a haircut. I was really overdue. I did that weird thing where you don't get a haircut for 4 months and you look in the mirror one day and you're like, wow, I'm due for a haircut. So feeling like a new man.
It shows. It's excellent. Well done. So,
Thank you. Good $20 I spent this morning.
yeah, it's a good place to be. Now, let me ask first: did you get the comments from your wife before this about the haircut, or was it just kind of a self-identification thing?
This was self-identification. She's one of those people who's like, whatever. I love you, even with shaggy hair, not shaggy hair. The other thing too that's been a real pain point is since leaving New York City and leaving the Bronx, coming to Central PA is finding a barber that I just think does a quality job. But I found one that's pretty good. The wait times can be a bit brutal at moments, but yeah, it was definitely a self-induced. I need a haircut. I'm going to Philadelphia to see some colleagues tomorrow. I didn't want to show up looking like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo.
That's fair. That's fair. So, well, good. They did a great job. So you look fantastic.
All right, well, shout out to Nick's Barber Shop. Shout out to Nick.
Free promo. Sponsor
Free
us.
promo.
Um, so you are on the Coolest People I Know podcast because you're one of the coolest people I know, and we're going to walk through our questions. So first of all, who are you?
Yeah, man, what a deep question to kick us off. Well, I guess the first thing is we've already given away a few things. I'm a husband to Sarah. We've been married for 14 years. I have three daughters who are 7, 5, and 3. I was a former church planter in New York City, what was called a co-vocational church planter. So I had a day job in addition to pastoring the church that I founded. I did that for about a decade and then relocated 2 years ago back to Central PA, which is where I grew up. Not in the same town where I grew up, about an hour and a half south of there. But I work in training and development professionally. That's kind of my W-2 job. And then on the side, I do a lot of writing. I wrote a book called Market Street Pastor that released last year, which is helping pastors kind of take the skills they learned in ministry, rebrand them for the marketplace to find marketplace jobs to sustain their ministry long term. And then I write a weekly Substack on the intersection of career, calling, and identity. And then I also have a podcast called Your Best Work, which I'm started releasing like 2 or 3 months ago. It's been a lot of fun. You were on it, so appreciate that. That episode should come out here in a little bit. So those are sort of all the pots I have my hands in right now. So a little bit of creative, a little bit of education, a little bit of ministry, a little bit of content. That's the world that I live in, and a lot of fatherhood, a lot of husbandry, if you will.
Husbandry. Anytime somebody says husbandry, I think of farms, but I
Yes.
would imagine
No,
not so
no,
many
no,
fences, not so many cages for the kids.
no, exactly, exactly. I live in Lancaster County now, so it could really go both ways. My daughter has told me she wants to get goats, which I have found out that goats will actually eat your grass in your backyard, so that could save me from mowing the lawn. That's like 2 more hours in my week I can optimize for something else. So who knows? Could have goats in my future.
Hey, it's a good strategy. You just get like half a dozen of them, depending on, I guess, on your size,
hmm
and just let them run free.
Yeah, and eat your grass, and you don't have to mow anymore. So I mean, it's the other things to maintain goats, but hey, you know what? Pick your battles.
I mean, they're almost because they're so free range. You just let them run and do their thing, and as long as people around you are okay with them eating their stuff, I think that'd be fine, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't live in an HOA neighborhood. There's nothing that says you can't have live animals in your backyard. People have dogs and cats. What's the difference?
There you go. What are even laws anymore? Just let them run free and they'll be fine. So,
Exactly.
okay, second big question that we're going to talk about. What is it that you're building?
Yeah, so the big thing that I built, I guess it big is relative. Big in my small niche. It's actually funny because the barber and I were talking about the punk and metal scene in Central PA in the 2000s. He just got back from a big festival, and I was asking him, like, were any big acts there? He's like, well, big acts for those who are in that scene and like that kind of music, yes. For those who like the top 40 radio songs and never heard of any of these bands, no. So I would say that yes, what I built that was big is I built this business called I Help Pastors Get Jobs, which has the book, has some digital courses. I do some coaching and cohorts as well, really helping pastors who are career changers, want to either get out of ministry altogether or want to transition into a co-vocational or bivocational model of ministry. That's the big thing that I built. The thing I'm building right now is I'm working on a new project, which is around congruence in leadership and professional work. So I actually found the problem behind the problem, if you will, is that a lot of the pastors I work with, they realize, oh, the real pain point I'm having is this is not why I signed up for a ministry. So therefore, how do I get congruence of my inner world and my outer world? And you know this, Doug. This is not just a ministry problem. This is a human being problem. There's professionals as well, startup founders, entrepreneurs, all the above, and they don't have alignment of their inner and outer world. So my next book I'm working on, hoping to publish it the second half of this year. Working title is called The Incongruent Professional, those who struggle to understand why. So still kind of workshopping that a little bit, but actually did a LinkedIn post last night about it, and a lot of like people I know from the business community were like, "Yes, I need this because this is exactly what I'm experiencing." So that's what I'm working on right now. I just feel like coming alongside people, working with them, mentoring them, helping them do kind of that inner work, figuring out what's next for their life. That's sort of the next iteration of work that I'm building right now.
I love that. And I definitely feel you on the idea of congruence. I was talking with my daughter about it, because she wants to go into a very creative field, and the tech company I run is very focused on kind of the day to day of like marketing and taking care of things for people and building out their projects. And so helping her kind of see yes, you've got this big creative side, but sometimes business is not very creative and it's grunt work. And it feels like it takes all of your really cool creative work and then throws it all into a pit where it just gets ignored or stepped on, or somebody's like, hey, totally change this to something that's nothing I care about. I guess
Mm.
tell me a little bit of why this idea of congruence is so important for us as professionals, as people in general.
Yeah, yeah. I think to use your daughter as a case study, we grow up and we're told by our parents and our teachers and influences in our life, hey, you can be anything you want. And the world is your oyster, and fill in the blank. These sort of like motifs. Or here's another one, Doug. You ever hear this one? If you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. These are all
Oh yeah, the biggest lie I think I may have ever been told.
Yeah, exactly. Or follow your heart or follow your passion. Basically, the story in every Disney movie, right? If you do that, everything will be just fine. And then what happens is we follow our passions or our interests, and then what's the joke, right? If you want to meet the most talented uh musician from your hometown, just go to the Olive Garden in Times Square, and they'll be waiting tables, right?
Exactly.
So recognizing that following your passion is one thing, but I think following your mastery is a whole different element, and that's really where you can begin to build businesses and make money and be marketable in the country, in the world, and in different companies and what have you. So when it comes to the idea of congruence, I think it's a matter of identifying how are you uniquely wired, what is your skill set and your mastery? What are the things that come easy to you that are difficult for somebody else? And how can you find creative ways to implement that into your work and into your career and into your profession? So, for example, if you are someone who's highly creative and you have that spark inside of you, if you're a writer, you're an artist, you're someone like that, d data analytics might not be the first career choice that you pick. Yet, there's actually ways that you have to be creative in synthesizing data and putting together reports and saying, what does this actually mean? There's ways in which you can take that skill set that you have for creativity and put it into a field that feels so bland, like data analytics. So congruence is a matter of figuring out, okay, what's my unique wiring? And then how's a way I can make this marketable to someone that's actually going to pay me money for this skill? One last finer point on that, and this is one of the concepts in the book. So we talk all the time about like candor, open, honest feedback, having, direct conversations with people. But if you don't understand your identity and aren't secure in who you are as a human, how in the world are you going to give someone direct feedback? Because they might say, well, screw you, I don't believe that. Then all of a sudden your inner world is shattered, right? So I feel like there's so many business books that are like, just be honest, just shoot straight, just be a transparent leader. It's like, yeah, but if I'm living off the praise of those around me and I'm a perpetual people pleaser, I'll never do that. So how do I not be a perpetual people pleaser and have a strong inner identity that I can have those tough conversations? So that's kind of the idea of it is really knowing yourself first, knowing how you're uniquely wired, and not being afraid to live that out in innovative and creative ways.
That's so good. And you're right. Absolutely so needed for who we are as people and what that looks like for our day to day. I guess, how does somebody go about finding that sense of self without actually having that congruence to begin with? I
Mm.
think a lot of times we're kind of told that, like you said, like find what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, I mean, the reality is like what I love could be sleeping in and like staying up late or doing these even like really fancy like coding projects on my end, but no one's paying me for those kind of things just yet. And so that sense of inner self that says this thing I love is not necessarily something that people are wanting right now can kind of really get in the way of that journey. At least it would seem to me. I guess tell me a little bit of what that looks like.
Yeah, so there's kind of a few paths somebody who's in that messy middle can pick up on. The first one is I have a lot of people I work with, and I just have to tell them plainly, listen, your job, what you do from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, doesn't need to be your passion. No, it's like very unorthodox for a lot of people. But saying, hey, listen, it can be what funds your passion, it can be what funds your interests and your life. It doesn't need to be what you wake up every single day and get super jazzed about. You can get there, but that you might not be there today. It may not even be there in a year. But you need to begin to figure out, okay, how do I kind of close the gap of 40 hours a week I'm doing something that doesn't really excite me, and nights and weekends, my 5 to 9, if you will, I'm doing what excites me. So how do you begin to close that gap? So I think that's the first one. Some people don't even know what that is. To your point, it's like if I just like watching Netflix and eating Cheetos. It's like, well, how do I turn that into a job? Well, not sure if you can, but finding things that are life-giving to you. But then also, how do I take what's life-giving and natural to me and solve problems for other people? This is something that you actually shared on my podcast, which is advice I give to a lot of others. People don't pay you for your ideas; they pay you because you solve a problem for them. You solve a pain point. It's kind of business 101, right? If I call a plumber because I have a leaky faucet, I don't care about his views on ancient literature. I care about his ability to fix my fix my faucet. And I think for some people that this idea that because I'm so brilliant or because I'm so thoughtful in this area, people will pay for that. Listen, there's someone on YouTube and on Instagram and on TikTok right now who's more thoughtful than you are on that topic and is giving out that content for free. So maybe you should think about how you actually solve a problem for somebody else. So I think the first one is how do I close that gap? You close that gap by solving an actual tangible problem for somebody. And then the third thing is, and this is where I think a lot of people get tripped up, is we live in such a distracted society and world that that time of like journaling, retreating, solitude, being alone with your thoughts is so foreign to so many people that it's uncomfortable to like sit alone in your room with a journal and a pen and just write down your thoughts and ideas. It's like, my gosh, if you just do that, you're probably in like the top 0.01% of people on the planet. So I think just not being afraid to be alone with your thoughts and just identify who it is that you are. And then I guess to put a finer point on that last one is having your inner circle of friends and family also speak into that process, having people around you. I'm a big believer that all of us, regardless of where we are professionally, should have a personal board of directors and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm considering this. Like, what are your thoughts that can give us that really clear and honest feedback and aren't afraid to hurt our feelings to help us, move forward in different domains and areas? Because I don't think there's any expert that I know of, and I'm probably not for you either, Doug, that went into a cave for a year, developed a gridlocked business plan, and came out with their next, billion-dollar startup. They did that through advisors, through counselors, through people that they knew that were speaking into that process and making it better. So those are the three and a half things I would say.
Three and a half. I like
Three and
it.
a half.
I like the idea of a personal board of directors, finding those individuals who are around you who can that you give permission to speak into your life.
Hmm.
And I think, throughout all of our lives, at least at some point, our hope is that we all find that kind of like that mentor person who walks alongside of us, becomes like the storytelling in a movie where all of a sudden this person, sees the potential that we have and that kind of thing. Where that reality doesn't always manifest that way.
Right.
Or we've been in kind of the opposite circumstance where that person has taken us under their wing or given us feedback, and we're just like, this person doesn't get it at all. This person is, causing harm, whatever that might be. What
Right.
does that we've all gotten the bad advice from a mentor at some point. What does that process look like for finding like a personal board of directors?
Yeah, I love this question, and I think it's one of those things that we all have this idea. I'm sure you remember this movie from back in the day. Remember Good Will Hunting, like Matt Damon, Robin Williams, and like
Oh yeah.
it's like such a powerful movie. And at least for me in my life, I'm like I just have to find my Robin Williams, my guy I'm going to sit with once a week, older, wiser mentor who's really going to invest in me and cut through the crap and get to the hard issues and help me grow as a human.
You just
And
walk around looking for blackboards that have math problems written on them that you can solve.
yes, exactly, and hope the chips fall where they may. And the reason why it's a really good movie is because it's a movie. It's an unrealistic story. Most of us are not going to
Totally.
have relationships like that with others. So I always want to encourage people, temper your expectations of what you think a mentor is. So, for example, let me use you, Doug. I have a question that I know you have domain expertise in. If I shot you a text and asked you a question and you shot me a text back and it was a 45-second interaction, that's a mentoring transaction. We're not sitting down for an hour every single week for 6 months, untangling deep problems and issues, but you're giving me a little bit of you in exchange for value. So I think for some people, it's recognizing, hey, my mentor might be someone I text once a year, and I have a 3 or 4 message exchange, and that's good enough. Your mentor could be someone that you read their blog and listen to their podcast and you watch their videos, and they're kind of a mentor from a distance. I was really fortunate. Here's a perfect case study. I was able to not even befriend, that's too strong of a word, get acquainted with somebody through social media, through X, who was a New York Times bestseller. And I was like, hey man, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you make a living writing? You have this fantastic podcast, tens of thousands of subscribers, if not more. You speak at these different events, you hold conferences, you have a New York Times bestseller, you've collaborated with some of the biggest names in the industry. Like, can you just like break down dollars and cents how you do this? And he and I did a Voxer back and forth to each other, which is like a messaging app with voice memos. We probably had in total 45 minutes of conversation back and forth. We never had a Zoom call, we never had a phone call. And what I found out that was behind the curtain is he actually doesn't make his living doing that. He makes his living from a business that he runs on the side. So it was like just an
Wow.
eye-opening thing to me. Like here are you, like you're 20 steps ahead of me in the content creation, information sharing, speaking, podcasting, book writing world. And you're telling me, Eric, there's no money in this. My money actually comes from this. As like such a profound realization. 'Cause I could have spent the next 2 years spinning my tires trying to build like a life off of creating content and realizing, oh, this guy's way ahead of me and he's not even doing it. Okay, I need to figure out something else in order to sustain myself long term. So I think just having that openness to ask those very blunt questions of how do you make this work, and getting a peek under the curtain of realizing, oh, there's actually more to the story than meets the eye. Um, Saved me 2 years of headache and heartache because I was not afraid to ask that tough question.
Wow, yeah, that's great. I love that idea of not necessarily looking for the master teacher kind of scenario that we see in all of the movies. I think, it's really easy to fall into that romanticized idea of somebody feeding into you and somebody giving you what you need, and making it just looking for the person even who's like 3 steps ahead of you, or even
Mm.
1 step ahead of you, can just give you that next thing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Spot on. I love what you said too. I think for a lot of people, they make the mistake of they look at the elite class of where they want to be 20 years from now. It's like, don't look at those people. Look at the person who's a year ahead of you or a step ahead of you. Talk to them. And then once you get to their level, talk to the next person. And then you'll and those are building blocks that'll take you to where you want to be in 20 years. But that person who's, you and I are starting our podcast. If we were to go ask, I don't know, who has a big name podcast like Stephen Bartlett, like Diary of a CEO. Hey, Stephen, you got 45 minutes to tell us about how you do podcasts? He doesn't. He's not going to respond to me. Maybe he'll respond to you, Doug, because you're more cool than I. But he has one of the biggest podcasts in the world. But we can talk to someone who's averaging 1,000 downloads or 2,000 downloads an episode and say, hey, could I have 45 minutes or a text message exchange or an email exchange? They're more likely to say yes, and then you can learn from them and then keep building and scaling as you see fit.
Yeah, that's really good feedback. So, and I'm literally going to steal that for this podcast. So, thank you regarding that. I imagine some of what you're writing in this new book really crosses over, or I guess kind of stems from even what you've learned from the I help. What is it? I help pastors get a
Yep.
job.com.
I help pastors get jobs.com. Yep.
Yeah, so I guess talk to me a little bit about that, because I would imagine, if you're not in the world of being a pastor, like pastors have jobs. It's called being a pastor. And
Hmm.
so why is this what you're doing here with this kind of thing important? And how does that kind of meet with what you're doing with the book you're writing?
Yeah, the reason why I think what I help pastors get jobs is important is because we have been kind of post World War II in America. There was this reality that you could go to Bible college, maybe even go to seminary. You could start off as an associate pastor or a youth pastor. Maybe by the time you're in your mid 30s, early 40s, depending on your tradition, denomination, you could become a senior pastor. You could serve a church of, sub 100 people, and you could have, you're not going to, be rich, but you could have like a middle class life. You could pay for a mortgage, you could pay for groceries, you can have health insurance, you can get by. And I think what has ended up happening for a variety of reasons, some of that being um, that mid-sized church is becoming less and less prevalent in our society. We either have like the mega church or we have like the storefront slash house church models. You have those are kind of becoming bigger. The middle-sized church is getting smaller. The second one is there's a lot of conversation around things like missional communities, dinner churches, micro churches, more simple expressions of church that aren't the 3 songs, a sermon, collect an offering, and that's church for everybody. So more people are becoming interested in that. Um, and the third one is I think the pandemic kind of reshuffled the deck for a lot of pastors because they realized, okay, the way we've done ministry for all this time, it's time to rethink and reevaluate how we serve people in our community and in our context. So that's kind of created this perfect storm, if you will, for pastors to realize, okay, I can't go to Bible college, get a job as an associate, 35 become a lead pastor, and think for the next 30 years I can sustain a life in this, inflation, cost of living, housing crisis world that we live in. So I need to be creative about how I support my family and fund my ministry. So what I believe I've seen happen in the last 10, 15 years since I've gotten into ministry, kind of bivocational, co-vocational ministry was looked at as kind of like, oh, you're kind of into JV of ministry. You're not a real pastor. You couldn't quite, get a church to support you. That's kind of sad. To now the table has almost flipped where it's like, oh, you're only a full-time pastor? Like that's all you do? Most people I know Like they want to have a side business, they want to have a side hustle, they want to have something that they do in addition to pastoring, not only for the financial resources, but also to have a foot in the community and a foot in the marketplace and understand the lived reality of those in the pews that they're ministering to week in and week out. The challenge that the opportunity that I saw in the market, to use that language, is there's all this stuff happening. There's no one raising their hand to say, okay, but how do you actually get a marketplace job? You went the Bible college route, you've been in church ministry, you have skills, you have things that you've done that are remarkable and profound, but how do you translate that on a resume or in a job interview at XYZ Corporation when they're looking to hire you? Because as you and I are both aware, I'm sure the listener is as well, is a job interview in a traditional job and a job interview in a church are radically different. The skill sets they want in a pastor and the skill set they want in a professional are different. And it's not a matter of changing who you are. It's just a matter of repackaging and rebranding what you've done professionally in a way that makes sense to the hiring manager or the recruiter. So that was the problem I was aiming to solve. To go back to that earlier language, is I'm passionate about ministry, church planting, co-vocational ministry and mission. I'm also passionate about workforce, about entrepreneurship, about business. I believe that those can exist in one of the same. So it's like I can solve this problem because in my day job, I help reskill young professionals for the marketplace. So I've learned all these things about how to get a job, how to interview well, how to present yourself in these scenarios. There was nobody that I saw that was helping pastors do that. So that was the track that I decided to take.
That's awesome and such a needed skill set because you're right. You know, where the idea of, being a pastor, I think, crosses over into a number of different skill sets, translating those skill sets into, modern day workforce or like, for lack of better terms, like secular, kind
Mhm.
of work, becomes a much different animal. I, it's interesting to me that you mentioned about seeing pastors who are only pastors getting feedback that they don't have other gigs.
Mhm.
Is that common? This is the first I've heard of anything like that. I've been co-vocational for, over 20 years, and I've gotten so many of the comments where like, well, someday you'll be a real pastor, and I avoid slapping the person because of the fines, but like a part of me feels like, A, you don't get it, and B, you know, this is the way that the world is moving. And it
Mhm.
sounds like from what you're seeing that some of that has already happened.
Yeah, yeah. I think also a big part of that is because doing ministry in New York City for so long, um, high cost of living, obviously part of the country to live in, very capitalistic. I think there's a million millionaires in New York City, so just one city has a million millionaires. Um, and I also for a lot of people in the culture, it's like working hard is very highly valued. So if you were a pastor and went to a coffee shop for 4 hours with your laptop to write a sermon, that wouldn't be like really respected or valued. I'd be like, "What are you doing now?" Like, I'm going to go, hustle at my job and have my boss breathing down my neck and a client mad at me, and I'm on a pip right now, and you're my pastors in a Starbucks writing a sermon for 4 hours. Like, it just doesn't quite translate in the brain of a New Yorker. Like that's all you do. That's your only job. Has that made it to Lancaster County where I live now? Maybe it will in 5 years or 10 years, but I think maybe more in like San Francisco, New York, Chicago, LA. That could be a bit more. And what I think happens is typically culture comes downstream from those large coastal cities to other parts of the country. With that being said, the internet has made the world much more flat. It has made the world much more accessible. So I think there's a lot of emerging pastors. I get calls every week, man, from guys who I'm just graduating from seminary. I have $80,000 of student loan debt. This church wants to hire me in Kentucky for $45,000 a year. My wife is pregnant with our first kid. How am I going to do this? And I also tell them you're not. It's not going to work. So let's figure out what will work. And what will work is you taking a youth pastor job for 20 hours a week and you working a secular job, to use that language, somewhere else, so you can actually get some income to pay off that debt, save for a house, support your family. Like that's going to work. So I think there's a lot of people now in the emerging generations that are recognizing, oh, this I hate to use this language, but your listener will get it. This business model is not sustainable in the 21st century. What is? It's like, well, co-vocational is the future because people want to serve their church. They want to be, you
Yeah.
know, in ministry, but they're like, how do I afford this? Especially if I'm living in a high cost of living area.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think even too for some of like the smaller churches, like you mentioned, like a lot of neighborhood churches can't necessarily support somebody who's going to be full time, or they don't even necessarily have the need for somebody who's going to be full time. It's a lot of not necessarily wasted time and effort or and resource, but that kind of thing that can be invested elsewhere. I think one of the best co-vocational models I ever heard, and forgive me, I know the church is in Illinois. I don't remember where exactly, but the lead pastor, helped grow the church, said, no, we're all going to be co-vocational and allow them
Hmm.
to really invest wisely in those areas so that both the individuals who are pastoring could have um, marketplace experience as well as a foot in the market, like you said, so that they really understand what their people are going through. It also allows them to invest in ministry and opportunities that they wouldn't be able to otherwise because they're not sharing a full-time salary in one particular place. They're able to hire a kids leader and a worship leader, and an associate pastor, a prime timers pastor, and all those other kind of things in order to make that happen. So it seems like it's not. I'm hoping at least it's not just a New York City thing. I definitely get that with how expensive housing is
Sure.
in a place like New York City. Um, I have a friend of mine who lives in Queens who gets their apartment. It's like a two-bedroom for like $4,700 a month, and it's a cheap one. And I'm just like, oh no, I'm good. But I would imagine,
Right.
as the world continues to evolve, as the world continues to change, that we'll begin to see that spread into other areas.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up what you did, Doug. 'Cause I think one of the linchpin of co-vocational ministry being sustainable is what you just described, which is a shared leadership model. I mean, you can have a senior pastor or a lead pastor, that's fine, but he or she can't be the end all be all, preach every sermon, lead every small group, go to every hospital visit, you know, all that. Like, and I think that's what people don't always recognize is that if you are attending a church where your pastor is co-vocational, you're going to have a philosophy of ministry that says we're all, ministers. We're all called to serve. There isn't room for spectators. So I attend a church now, and I mean it's an amazing church, and it has a few full-time pastors, a few kind of part-time staff that are supporting the ministry. And we have the pain point that a lot of churches have, which is the Pareto principle, the 80-20. So
Mm,
20% of the people, volunteers, part-time staff, full-time staff, kind of do all the ministry, and 80% are spectators. They show up on Sunday and maybe they tithe, and but they have very limited engagement in the day-to-day work of the congregation. When I was church planting in the Bronx, we were the opposite. 20% were spectators that showed up and consumed, and 80% were involved in something. Even that involvement was, I'm the coffee person. I show up, I set up the coffee every Sunday. That's my ministry. Amazing. Like we need that person because expect your pastor to go work a 40-hour week plus job and then show up on Sunday, in addition to preaching and praying and caring for people, he's also making the coffee, and he's also making sure the sound is okay. He's also making sure that the worship team has what they need. That's not going to work. You have to have a philosophy that says we're all in this together. This is our church. We have a collective that we're working together to make it happen. And I mean, not to get, too theological, but I think that's what we see in Acts, right? We see the people of God on mission together. We don't see the solo pastor doing everything.
yeah, hard agree. I love that. Let's talk more about you. We're going to move into our hat question. These
Ooh,
are questions that were generated that are going to be chosen from a hat. I'm going to share my little tiny spinning wheel that I've created here, and we're going to let the wheel choose a question. So, are you ready? Because some of these, it ranges from everywhere, like super serious to like, very, very. I don't even know at this point. So,
I know some of
are
these look like some real ringers, man. I'm getting nervous. Whew. All right, let's do it.
you should be nervous. Okay, so let's spin the wheel. And again, oh, it even comes with a wheel noise. That's the first I've heard. Let's see. And your question is, If you had to wear one outfit for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I really lucked out here. I got the easy one because probably a decade ago now, I read Steve Jobs' biography but from Isaacson. And obviously, Steve Jobs is a very complex person, very imperfect person, had his flaws and plenty of them. But one thing I extracted from that book is that Steve Jobs made the conscious decision, I want to have a uniform. And we all, if you follow his work, you all see his keynotes, whatever, black turtleneck, black jeans, pair of sneakers. That's what he wore pretty much every day, everywhere. So from that book, I got the idea that I wanted to make one less decision every day. So every day I wear a black V-neck, black jeans, and sneakers. Sometimes I'll put a hoodie on if it's cold, or I also have some black long sleeve shirts as well. So I wear all black, I would say 6 out of 7 days a week. Occasionally I'll put on like a collared shirt or something if I'm going somewhere a bit more formal or dressy. My wife and I had a date last night, so I dressed up a bit for that. But yep, black t-shirt, black jeans, pair of sneakers. I would say up to 365 days a year, 330 of them, I wear that outfit.
And so, is that primarily to take off the decision fatigue? Is that more just kind of a style and brand thing? I know Steve Jobs was kind of a mix of both.
Yeah, mine's also a mix of both because I feel like an outfit like that is accessible no matter where you're going. You can go to a, networking event. It looks kind of formal because it's just, one color. You can also just go hang out with your friends at, Buffalo Wild Wings, and it's also casual enough for that. And then also the decision fatigue as well. So I have 3 young kids, and every morning I give them breakfast, and some days they want cereal, some days they want eggs, some days they want bread, some days they want yogurt. Like that, those are decisions that I'm like trying to implement in my morning within the first 30 minutes of waking up. But if I know I can go upstairs, I can shave and I can shower and put on a black t-shirt and black jeans, I'm not rooting through my closet saying, what am I going to wear today? That decision has already been made for me. And that's just one less thing to worry about in my life.
Interesting. How do you respond to people who would hear something like that and say, it really can't be that bad? Like, come on, everyone around us is thinking, like, I need to put on clothes today. So we're all thinking through what we've got going on. So why is it that this kind of thing would impact you to that level?
Yeah, yeah. And here's what I would respond back. It's like if you getting up in the morning and picking an outfit or laying out your outfit the night before, that's something that you enjoy and that's something that like it gives you life and it makes you happy and you like styling your outfits and having different fits for different occasions. More power to you. I just am not someone who like super prioritizes having like funky or cool or eclectic clothes. Plus, I just think all black is cool. Just looks cool. It's slimming, it's trendy, it's comfortable for me. I grew up listening to punk rock and skateboarding, so I like black, and it works for me. If it works, listen, man, here's what I say: Johnny Cash, all black. Cornel West wears all black. Benedictine monks wear all black. Listen, works for those 3 groups. Good enough for me.
You had me at Johnny Cash. I'm set. Between the black clothing and the new haircut, like you're there, man. You've got that style,
Got
so
got
I
that got
dig
that got that vibe for sure. And here's the funny thing about it, man. I worked at a place for about a year, and every day I wore black jeans and a black t-shirt. Occasionally I switch it up. It's like a very, very hot day, like a lighter shirt or whatever. But I was probably there for 10 months. And one of like the senior leaders at the company was like, Eric, you wear all black every day? I was like, yeah. And I would see this guy pretty much every day. So it took him 10 months to realize that. So I also don't feel so self-conscious about those outfit choices because I'm like, listen, people are in their own little worlds. They don't care about what you're wearing. So why should I over stress myself about what I'm wearing?
it. Totally makes sense. So I love that. I love this hat question because it gets people understanding different ways to think about these kind of things.
Yeah.
So I'm totally with you. Like I find like I make so many decisions throughout the day that I like to set out everything I'm going to wear for the entire week, like that Sunday before, because I'm
hmm
just like, I don't want to get up and think about it. And so I love hearing this. That's awesome. Okay. Last question. What is the one question that no one has ever asked you that you wish they would?
Um, about 4 years ago, I started spending every birthday weekend at a Benedictine monastery in upstate New York. I'm not Catholic. I've never interacted with, the Benedictine community before, but I was kind of teetering on burnout. I wasn't kind of. I was teetering on burnout, post-COVID, church planting, co-vocational, young dad, and decided, maybe it'd be good to just get away for 2 or 3 days, go up there, no Wi-Fi, very limited cell reception, and you're living amongst men who have decided that to give their lives to poverty, give their lives to chastity, give their lives to community, and it's a juxtaposition from my life. I'm married, living in this capitalistic city. My life is I have community, but not like that, not that intimate or that close. And I found it to be a very healing and restorative experience. I genuinely thought I would just go once and just like that'd be my monk weekend. I'd never think about it again. But now I go every year for my birthday. I've gone 4 years in a row, and I look forward to it. I have times when it's like January. My birthday's in March, where it's like January, February. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for monk weekend. It's why I do a lot of my writing, a lot of my thinking, a lot of my deep inner work. Um, and I really look forward to it. And I feel like the Lord really speaks to me in those spaces. It's away from my normal routine. And I've been doing that for 4 years, like I said, and I've never had a person ask me like, Eric, why do you do that? Like, what do you get out of that? You're like literally going into the middle of the woods with a bunch of monks for a weekend and hanging out. Like, what's so unique about that space and that environment? And yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I think everyone should do it, even if you're not even a religious person. Just getting away for a few days by yourself is really life-giving and really transformative. So that's the question I wish more people would ask: is monk weekend something we all should consider?
And so it sounds like your opinion is we all should definitely consider that. So I appreciate that you answered that already. I guess tell us a little bit about what that experience is like. If you've piqued our interest, I want to book a monk weekend for next weekend. What does that kind of look like? What should I be expecting?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that you should expect is that if you are operating at a high octane level, you're on Zoom calls all day, you get Slack messages all hours of the day, you're answering emails, you're making decisions, your life is busy. If you're a young parent, your kids are, have a lot of needs, expect the first 24 hours just to have a complete and total crash. So that was my first experience.
A
So
crash.
a crash, a genuine crash, because for the one I go to, it's Mount Savior Monastery in Elmira, New York. It's actually up on a hill. You kind of go up like a dirt road to get there. It's quiet. It's extremely peaceful. They actually raise sheep on the property, so there's sheep all around, grazing around you. And like I said, no Wi-Fi, limited cell reception. And the monks host people year round. Like they kind of understand you're coming here to retreat. Like so they're not asking you to do things. It's not a typical like corporate retreat where you're doing icebreakers and trust falls and workshops. Like it's none of that. It's all right, here's the key to your room, go to your room. And you go in your room and you close the door and you're like, okay, now I'm here. And my first time going, Doug, I think the first 24 hours I was there, I slept for probably 16 or 17. I just like it's like just pulling the e-brake on your soul. Like and your body is just like, okay, yeah, literally you can't look at Facebook, you can't work on your business, you can't, call anybody, you can't text anybody. And you just for me, like you just prepare for the crash. And then when you kind of come out of that foggy, experience, then you can actually get to like the okay, what do I want to get out of this time? So I've spent half of my monk weekends working. So I wrote a whole entire book in 3 days over monk weekend. But I've also spent 3 days simply just doing soul care. Like my very first time going there, this is actually really personal, but I want to share it with you is I wanted to catalog every single person that was part of the church who just disappeared from the congregation with no reason, no like email, text, phone call, meeting. Here's why I'm leaving during the pandemic. So we stopped meeting physically for a good while. And I sat down, I wrote in my journal 40 names of people that were engaged in our community during pre-COVID that were no longer engaged. And these are just 40 people that like didn't even tell me like what they were doing, just disappeared. Wouldn't respond to texts, wouldn't respond to emails, just gone. And I just spent time really grieving each and every one of those names and really praying and processing and forgiving and releasing those people and not feeling like a bitterness or an anger towards them. So I think you can kind of go in with two mindsets. The first one is I want to go there and just have a really productive weekend of creating and developing and designing and thinking strategy, big picture. Or do I want to go there and do like deep inner soul work and like really begin to like process what does the last year of my life look like? What are the areas in which I need to let go? What are the areas in which I need to forgive and heal? The beautiful thing about Monk Weekend, they provide all the meals, so you're not like stressed out about cooking or cleaning or anything like that. They also stop 7 times a day for prayers. You can go to those, but you don't have to. But that's like those are like nice breaks throughout the day to like you hear the church bell ring. Like, okay, I'm gonna go over there and pray with the monks now. Gives yourself a little like break in your day. So yeah, I would say if you're interested in Monk Weekend, kind of make an agenda in advance. This is going to be like a healing, restorative, self-care weekend, or just going to be like a deep work, deep thinking stuff I just don't have time to do in my day-to-day weekend. And then in the middle of that, prepare for a 24-hour crash when you arrive. Just know if you're like going for 3 days, just block off one day that nothing will happen besides sleeping.
That is a good strategy, it sounds like. So, yeah, that's brilliant. Giving yourself that time to do that inner work. And I love that you called out the crash first because you started mentioning like the Slack messages and emails and all that kind of stuff not being there. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what I would even do to myself if I were in that situation. Like a quiet hour and I feel like, uh-oh, did the internet go away? Did like the world collapse? And like being reminded that no, all that noise is not natural and you know you need those quiet times is really
Yeah.
key.
It is. And it's also like for me, it was a bit of an alarm to make me realize, oh, am I like operating out of a place of abundance of energy, or am I operating out of a space of just putting out fires? And when you realize I'm removed from Slack messages and emails and phone calls, and my reaction is to fall asleep. Okay, now it's a sign in my brain I have to put some healthier and more sustainable mechanisms in my life, so I'm not operating out of reactive mode 24/7.
That's fantastic. Eric, you were one of the coolest people I know, and I'm grateful that you had a chance to share your story today. So thank you so much. Tell us how we can find you and how we can all keep in touch with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Doug. And likewise, you are certainly one of the coolest people I know as well. The easiest way to find me is actually my Substack, erichoke.substack.com. I post a newsletter every Monday morning and a podcast every Thursday discussing all the things that we talked about today. It's a little bit eclectic. It's a little bit, all over the place. If you're a ministry, business, entrepreneur, you'll have some posts you're like, I don't really get it, and some posts where you're like, wow, this really spoke to me today. So I hope that you subscribe to that and join that community. Would love to meet you, hear your story, and see how we can serve each other.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing today. Eric, we all appreciate your time, appreciate your story, and appreciate your existence. Thanks,
Oh,
man.
thanks, Doug.